So I would say at least 2 or 3 times a week I'm answering messages or answering the phone from people asking questions with stuff like, hey, I'm really wanting to get a Jeep. What kind of Jeep should I get? Or, hey, I just found this Jeep. What do I need to look for? You know, what should be like the major red flag where I turn away? And don't get me wrong, I do not mind answering anyone's questions about anything about a Jeep. I really appreciate, people wanting to get into the sport. So tonight what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over some of those things that I'm telling these people that are messaging. Before I start going over stuff like that, I do kind of have a history / resume with Jeeps. I've had CJs, multiple YJs, Cherokees, 2 Comanches, LJ. I've had a 4-door JK. My wife has a 4-door JLU. So I've been around the block with them, and of course the Cherokee Chief. So if I had to pick a favorite, I probably couldn't. They all have their ups and downs. The main question that I get is, hey, I'm looking to get an average priced Jeep, with a budget in mind. What should I look for? And I tell people the same thing. I tell them a TJ. And the TJ, it's coil spring front and rear. I mean, when Jeep designed these, they blew this design, out of the water. This was like unlike anything, a small Jeep had in it. There was guys doing coil spring conversions in YJs, and then they just brought this out from the factory. So like I said before, if I had to recommend any budget-minded build, like somebody just that wants to jump into the Jeep game, I would tell them a Jeep TJ or an LJ. Of course, the LJ, you're going to have more room, but you're also going to be paying for that extra room. Whereas the TJ, like you see right here, you can find them pretty cheap nowadays. So what I have behind me is a 1998 Jeep TJ. This Jeep was purchased from the county that I'm in. I actually know the owner. Me and my buddy, we kind of went into it together. We're going to be building this Jeep on the channel. But before I started building it and doing an introduction, I kind of wanted to just go over some of the things, some of the red flags that I found in this Jeep, some of the things that I liked, some of the things that I really did not like. So lucky for me, whenever I did come across this Jeep, it was in a parking lot. It wasn't like behind some old barn in a bunch of weeds. So I did get to crawl up underneath it and check it out. But I mean, it's a 1998. It's got the full soft top. It's got the half doors, tan interior, decent wheels and tires, but those are coming off anyway. The first thing that I looked at whenever I saw this TJ, before I even knew it was for sale, or even if the guy wanted to get rid of it, was I looked at the frame. I looked at the frame for rust. So these TJs are absolutely notorious for frame rot. So this one, make sure you see if we can get some light. So this one is pretty solid. There is some surface rust around the holes in the frame, but that's pretty normal. But when I'm talking these things are bad for rust, I mean, I've seen TJs where you can stick your whole hand through the frame. I have literally been to a car lot in Greenville, North Carolina to look at a TJ, and it said on the windshield, no rust. So when I got there, the frame side, the outside frame was fine, but I crawled up underneath it and I could reach my hand in and touch the backside. So they had gone in and truck bed lined everything. So you got to watch people, because they will definitely try to trick you nowadays. But this one is solid all the way through. And something that you can do is you can just take a screwdriver and just go along the frame. You can tell that that's good metal. And so you can reach your hand in here and make sure that there's no rusty flakes or anything like that. So after I looked at the frame and everything, I started noticing what someone had tried to do right here, which does not bother me at all. I mean, because anybody that builds a TJ, the first thing that you take off are fenders. The second thing that concerned me was I noticed that the grill was bent right here. So this thing probably has been in some sort of collision, which once again does not concern me a whole lot. Because if that's the dent right here, then it's probably fine. If it was like pushed way in and the frame was bent, then yeah, I would be concerned about it. But stuff like that, it doesn't bother me. It may bother you, but stuff like that is just an afternoon fix, I'll say. So I have actually started messing with that grill, and it is kind of loose right now. That's why the body lines are kind of off right now. So that kind of brings me to another point, is whenever you're looking at one of these Jeeps, look at your body lines. You see right here, like for example, like if this was how the person was trying to sell it to you, and you notice that this hood is touching right here, and then you can stick your hand right here, that would definitely make me question, like, hey, what happened? But the body is in decent condition, so I've kind of got my little check off list of everything that's going to be done. The interior is okay. It definitely doesn't smell the greatest in here, but I mean, it's all complete. Definitely needs some cleaning up. And something else that I do whenever I'm doing, like, before I buy a Jeep, is the whole time I'm looking, I'm smelling too. So I'm smelling for gas, I'm smelling for coolant, I'm smelling for anything. I'm smelling for burnt, like a burnt wire smell, smelling for like burnt oil, like if oil is dripping on the exhaust or something like that. So the whole time you're looking, be smelling. I know that sounds crazy, but your nose won't lie to you, ever. So you don't really have to worry about it with stock Jeeps, but it's definitely something to look at if you're getting a rig that's been built, especially one around here in eastern North Carolina where water can get kind of deep. Is open up the doors and look for water lines. So I've gone and looked at a Jeep one time, and I mean, it was pretty built, but when I opened the door, I noticed a water line. So the Jeep was clean, but right here, there was a line. And the line went all the way across down there. It was a Cherokee. And guy said, he'd never really took it off-road or anything. So right there, I knew he's lying to me. So if he'll lie to me about that, he's gonna lie to me about it running good. So walked away from that one. So just check for water lines. There'll be an obvious water line like that, whether it's a flood vehicle or where they went through the Neuse River. So one thing that I always ask is, what was the biggest size tire that you had on this? So I mean, if they say like a 40 and they got a Dana 30 in the front, then you don't want that Jeep. So up under the hood, this is what kind of really sold me on this, is how well took care of it is under here. It is dusty, but it's also been sitting for a while. But I mean, everything looks factory. It's a 4.0. You can't really screw up too bad with these, but I mean, it's got air conditioner and everything. And something else that I always do is always check the air box. It kind of goes along with checking the door jambs for water, but let's kind of pop it in here. We're good. So that's what you want to see. Like if this was full of like old nasty mud and water stains and stuff like that, you're best to walk away. Something else that I always do is make sure that the Jeep is cool, and check the radiator. And you'll see why in a second. Look at that. Junk. So you can see in there, it is rusty and crusty. That's why you always use the recommended radiator fluid in your radiator. So now you've either got to flush this out or get a radiator, and I'm just going to get a radiator for it and do a flush. And you know, some people would freak out if they saw the radiator like that. Me personally, it's something that I can fix in an afternoon, like I said. You know, radiators, to me, they're a disposable item. You know, eventually you would have to change the radiator anyway, so might as well do it now. It's kind of like preventative maintenance. So if you get this far into looking at a Jeep and so far you're like, well, yeah, I can deal with all this for the price or whatever, then we'll get into the cranking. So what I like to look and listen for is, if for one thing, does it crank? The second thing, how long does it take to crank? And then the third thing, what does it sound like when it's finally cranked? So we'll go over that. So something else that I like to do whenever I'm buying a vehicle is I crank it up and then go to the exhaust pipe, and I stand there with my hands underneath the exhaust, seeing if I can catch any oil. Nope. So I couldn't really talk when the engine was running, but what I was listening for, of course, any knocking. I was listening for ticks, and I was listening for just the overall sound of the motor, and you know, the exhaust leaks. I did hear somewhat of an exhaust leak, and I believe it was further down the exhaust. I don't think it was the header. Those headers are known to crack and cause an exhaust leak, but like I said, it sounded like it was more towards underneath the passenger side floor, which probably right before the cat or something like that, it's got an exhaust leak. But, you know, like I said, you're listening for lifter ticks, you're listening for top end knocks, bottom end knocks. Those are pretty much, unless you're getting the Jeep for free, you probably don't want it, because that's just, you're getting somebody else's problem at that point if the motor's knocking. And then that's kind of if the motor's knocking, that's a telltale sign that they hadn't took care of the rest of the Jeep either. Probably should have checked the oil before I started the Jeep, but I always like to check it before and after it's been running for a little bit, just because I like to check it to see where the levels are at when it's cold, and then I like to see once the oil has been stirred up, what does it look like then. You got your engine oil here, you got your transmission fluid here, a dipstick there. So I'm going to check this, and that's good. I'm going to be smelling it also. So I always smell my oil just to make sure it doesn't smell like gas or anything. Like, you know, just to make sure the injectors aren't stuck or anything weird like that. And also, I always look for leaks before and after I crank it. So before, you know, I check to see if it's hot whenever I get there. So if the exhaust is warm, that's kind of like, what's this guy trying to pull? But so I like to look underneath it with everything cold to see if there's any leaks. And then once it's ran, you know, for a couple of minutes, I look to see if it's leaking. And then, you know, of course, after my test drive, I look to see if anything is leaking. Something else that these TJs are notorious for are the motor mounts. So they are right there. Hopefully you can see. And then that one doesn't look that bad either. So kind of like a telltale sign to see if the Jeep has been took care of is if the air conditioner still works. If they're really good at maintenance, you know, they of course change the oil and the transmission fluid and do all the fluids. And if their air conditioner goes out, what do? They fix the air conditioner, or they pay somebody to have the air conditioner fixed. So if they pay to keep that air conditioner maintained, they're paying to keep the rest of this Jeep maintained. Another thing that I look for is wiring. So this one can be very crucial. You want to start looking for wiring that is factory and wiring that is not factory. So obviously, this is the factory wiring. This is not factory wiring. See, like this right here, that was just stuck behind that. So I don't know who did that, but that's not how you wire something with exposed wire right behind it. Lord have mercy. Okay, that's what you don't want. That's what you don't want in your vehicle. But everything else, like this wiring right here, it looks like super clean. And I'm assuming those wires go to these crummy old fog lights right here. Yeah, these are probably not going to stay on. Rust, overall condition, and drivability. Those are pretty much the three things that, we're looking for. And so if you're looking at a Jeep and it has all three of those things and you're good with all three of those things, then it comes the driving portion, the driving test. And before I even get to this point, I look at the steering and the steering components, because I don't want to get in somebody else's off-road rig that they probably got, 2 threads in one of their steering heim joints, and as soon as you turn onto the road, it's just going to pull out, and then the tires are going to go this way, and then it's going to be ugly. So I always look at the steering and the control arms and stuff like that, just to make sure that there's nuts on the bolts. You never know with these people. So always look at stuff like that. Look at the track bar. Like this one, it's got a track bar front and rear. You definitely want to make sure that front track bar is at its fullest potential. It is pretty much the #1 cause for death wobble on these Jeeps. If that track bar, if it has any give to it at all, it's just going to let the tires just go crazy. So whenever I get that phone call that, hey, I'm looking at a Jeep right now and I think something's going on in the front end, I tell them all the same thing. I tell them, get somebody to turn the key forward in the Jeep. Don't start it, and rock the steering wheel back and forth real soft like this, back and forth, back and forth. And whatever is loose is going to rear its ugly head whenever you start moving that steering wheel back and forth when it's sitting on the ground just like this. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so we're up underneath the front of the Jeep, and say that you're looking at this Jeep about potentially buying it, and you're concerned because whenever you're driving it or whenever you're doing anything, it's kind of wobbling in the front end. And I would always say it would be this front track bar right here. So this is off the frame, this horn comes down, and then a tie rod in off the track bar comes up and goes into that hole and bolts down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get inside the vehicle. I'm going to leave y'all down here. I'm going to get inside the vehicle, turn the key forward, and rock the steering wheel back and forth. And y'all let me know if that moves. Y'all see that? That is a bad track bar. So you can see near about the whole Jeep is moving whenever I do that. Let me show you from my point of view. So there's the little motorcycle stand that I had y'all on. So that's the front tire. I'm rocking the steering wheel. Watch this. Watch the front tire and watch the Jeep. Y'all see that? The Jeep is moving, the tire is staying still. That's nuts. So that's something that you want to figure out before you drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on the way home. Personally, I wouldn't drive that 15 minutes down the road. I would definitely bring a trailer, and I always recommend people that go to buy Jeeps, just bring a trailer either way. Because something like that, like a track bar would be like, you know, maybe $100 and something that you could do in your driveway. And you wouldn't want to miss out on like a cool deal on this Jeep because you can't drive it home because you didn't bring a trailer, but you could fix it. You just bring a trailer. Always bring a trailer. Play it safe. So one of the things that I'll say would be an honorable mention that I look at are the soft tops. This one obviously is not the factory top from 1998. I'm sure it's in a junkyard somewhere. But this one's in decent condition. It's pretty rough. It's probably 10, 12 years old. But like the zippers and stuff, they're pretty seized up. It's safe to say that this Jeep is pretty rough. I do have a lot of things in store for this Jeep. I'm not just gonna be driving it around the way it is. I plan on modifying it pretty heavily. And we'll go over that, you know, briefly at the end of the video. But, you know, a lot of these things that would be red flags to y'all, you know, aren't really red flags to me. You know, I just have a vision in mind for this Jeep. You might be asking yourself, well, what are you going to be doing with it? Well, I'm actually going to be starting a new build series on it. I'm going to be doing a build on this, and I actually have another Jeep that I'm going to be starting a build series on. And so you'll have to stay tuned for that. But this is going to be one of the Jeeps in my build series. So in my last video, if you remember me showing you this Rusty's kit that came in, this is a 3-inch long travel suspension kit. You know, I said that I was going to be putting it on a future project. Well, here is the future project. These are sick. These are from Rock Tricks, and check these out. They are nasty. I love these. These are 17s. And I'm also going to be upgrading the axles on this, so you'll have to stay tuned to figure out what axles I'm actually going to be putting in this Jeep. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate y'all watching. If you learned anything from this video, please hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss out on anything on this TJ build. And if you can think of anything that I missed going over, like a new vehicle, like if there's something that you look for when you look for a new vehicle, or when you look for like a rock crawler or a Jeep project, put it in the comments. I definitely want to hear them. And that way, you know, if somebody's watching this and, you know, they think I missed something, they can find it in the comments. So that would be super cool. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you on the next one.